Kingdom Come Deliverance is the best indie game I've ever played. Alright, maybe that's a bit of a hyperbolic statement, but hear me out. As of now, I'm around 15 hours or so into my first playthrough. Yes, I'm not blind to the numerous bugs and annoyances the game contains. At times it can be particularly janky. Yes, I'm not even that far into the game, so it might end up not being the best indie game I have ever played. Though it's hard to ignore the fact that this game, at heart, is an indie game with the visual style, atmosphere, and production value of any AAA game being released today. To me, that's bloody impressive, but before I get into my first impressions of the fully released game, I need to go back and talk about my introduction to the game itself. In 2016, I was given access to the Kingdom Come Deliverance beta. I can't really remember how this happened, but it did. At the time, I didn't even know the game existed, which is surprising since an action RPG that takes place in a realistic medieval setting sounds right up my street. So I popped open Steam and gave it a go. I'll be honest, I wasn't that impressed at the time. I could certainly see the potential and was excited to see how the game would be polished and improved for launch, but when playing the beta, I came across a few things that stuck out to me. The character models weren't that great, and the same can be said for their facial animations too. Henry, the main character, looked, in all honesty, kind of terrible, as did most of the other NPCs in the game world, though I will admit, both their clothing, armor, and other similar elements were pretty much spot on for my taste. It was only their faces of which I had a problem with. Furthermore, most of the NPCs in the game had this weird, dead-eye look that was both off-putting and actually kind of creepy. Just look at Henry's eyes. Then you have the visuals. Although impressive, they were also quite taxing on my system at the time. Mind you, as of the making of this video, my computer is now much more powerful than it was before. During the beta, however, I had to run the game on low to medium settings in order to get a somewhat stable frame rate, and even then, there were numerous visual bugs and other oddities that made the overall experience kind of lackluster. Now onto the combat model in the game, and at first I was quite impressed. Sure, there was both melee and sword combat in games such as Mount & Blade, where you would say the overall theme and setting is similar, but Kingdom Come was attempted to imitate something a bit more realistic. Though in the beta, everything felt a bit off and cumbersome in some places. I could see what they were going for, it just needed that extra layer of polish and shine. Once everything was played and done, I walked away from my keyboard both disappointed and hopeful for how the game would turn out. It's now February the 28th, 2018, and the game has been released for a fair bit now. And for the first time in a long while, I paid full price for a game and didn't regret it. Like mentioned before, Kingdom Come strives for a more realistic setting and gameplay experience. It casts away the wizards, dungeons, and dragons of other games for horses, blood, and swords. Everything in the game feels rooted in history, and what people say or do feels the same way. Though I should mention that I know nothing about 15th century Bohemia, but if I had to imagine what it would have been like, I would probably imagine something like what this game portrays the time period to be like. For anyone who doesn't know what the game is about, let me bring you up to speed. Like mentioned before, the game takes place in the kingdom of 15th century Bohemia, a region that was essentially smack dab in the middle of Europe. You play as a blacksmith's son in a time where a brutal civil war is currently brewing, and during a nice summer's day, a foreign army arrives outside your town walls. They then proceed to destroy both your town and your parents too. You then escape and the game begins proper. That's all I really wanted to say about the story, as I don't want to get into major spoiler territory here. So instead, why don't we look at the 3 aspects of the beta that I didn't really enjoy. Let's see how the following 3 aspects have now changed and what I think about them. They are player models, other visuals, and combat. First, let's talk about Henry. Remember this face? Not really the best. Let me give you a look on what Henry now looks like in the final release. As you can see, Henry went through quite the remodel of his facial features, now being modeled after and played by the actor Tom McKay. In my playthrough so far, I found Henry to be quite the enjoyable character, with Tom's performance also being enjoyable and strong. There are certain cutscenes in the game where you can really feel the emotion behind what Henry's been through at the start of the game. Pretty good stuff, and congratulations to Tom for a great performance so far. For every other NPC, things have certainly improved. Many of the NPCs I've encountered have differed regarding age, appearance, how they speak, and so on. You will of course see similar looking characters as you traverse through the land, but that's to be expected in such a large-scale game. Though the overall details in faces and animations have certainly improved. Just don't go expecting everything to be perfect. Also, no more creepy dead eyes. Let's now move on to the visuals regarding the game as one experience, and I must say, CryEngine 3 does a fantastic job in producing amazing environmental detail and nailing both the presentation and atmosphere of the bohemia that the developers crafted. There are no fantasy elements to be found in this game, so don't go expecting anything too crazy. Just disgustingly muddy roads, fields that stretch for miles, dense forests, and so on. All of which are plentiful in this game. It kinda reminds me of playing Oblivion due to all the green. It's comforting in some ways, but I would be remiss not to mention that this game does feature some odd pop-in issues when it comes to loading certain textures and other visuals, all of which can be quite immersion-breaking, though I imagine most of these issues will be improved upon in future patches to come. Next up is combat, and as you guys have already seen in this video, you control Henry and his movements while in a first-person perspective. So don't go in hoping you can have all the fun you wanted while in third person. That just ain't gonna happen. The combat at first can be quite challenging, though also very rewarding when done right. Comparing combat to what can be found in the beta, I would say they've certainly improved, though at the same time there is room for improvement. When engaged in combat, it feels a bit more fluid and smooth compared to the implementation found in the beta. I would say it's a lot more impactful and most importantly fun as you go back and forth with an opponent. Though you can cheese most fights if you equip a bow and arrow and start letting loose. And I can't forget to mention this, but sword fighting multiple opponents feels almost impossible, and not in a challenging way, more like this just doesn't feel good kind of way. Now, some people have already voiced their opinion about the combat and the initial barrier there is when it comes to engaging in combat successfully. A lot of people aren't comfortable with the fact that they can't just button mash like in Skyrim and then win a fight. You're going to have to learn, and if you don't want to, then the game just doesn't care because it doesn't really get easier. For myself, I like the feeling of life or death hanging over me when I'm playing a game like this. When no bugs are present and you're fighting an opponent or opponents, it's very tense and one wrong move could mean death. Also, since I'm only 15 hours into the game, I obviously don't have the best gear or the highest leveled character, but I'm always picking and choosing my fights carefully, as some combatants are nearly impossible for me to even begin to consider fighting. This kind of combat obviously won't appeal to everyone, and you know what? That's okay because not every game has to appeal to every kind of gamer. Luckily, there are a handful of tutorials for the player to make use of when talking to other characters. You'll be able to practice with both sword and your bow and arrow and so on. Just make sure to pay attention during those, as you really do need to learn how these systems work. Earlier in the video, I said I wasn't going to talk about the story too much as to avoid spoilers, but I will say this. So far, I found the main storyline of Henry and his quest for revenge to be both compelling and interesting. I like how he started and how he has continued to grow as I play through the game. With every quest and side quest I complete, it develops both his character and understanding of the world he lives in. I mean, he couldn't even read at the start of the game, and now he can. Since this is also an RPG, you can expect multiple choices to be offered to you as you play through the game in regards to what Henry can say, do, and how he interacts with the world around him. Will you be a noble knight or a raging arsehole? Of course, certain characteristics are set in stone, but a lot of things that Henry says or does is up to you. The game also features a ton of different and complex stats for you to level up through. If you want to get better at pickpocketing, then you best get practicing. Want to get handy with that sword, then you best get swinging. This applies to basically every action you take in the game. Horse riding, bartering, repairing, and the list goes on. Everything you do will slowly level up Henry in regards to various other stats. There are also other factors to consider as well, such as having to eat food, stay clean, and sleep. Though as you progress through the game, these become less of a problem as you unlock and activate certain perks that help smooth out the need to do such things in a regular occurrence. I really do like this system, as anything you experience in the game adds to Henry's experience. Also, I do have a soft spot for unlocking perks and so on. I know this video's been a bit messy, but I wanted to get my thoughts out there. I'm really enjoying this game so far, and although there have been moments which have really annoyed me when this game would bug out for some reason or another, The slow burn, which is Kingdom Come Deliverance, is certainly worth it for someone looking for a more realistic take on the whole action RPG genre. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.